Breaking rumors flooded social media tonight, claiming that Iran's supreme leader had been killed. But here's what we actually know. The claim spread rapidly across X, Telegram, and regional news blogs. This fuels rising tensions. Rising tensions mark the US-Iran talks. Central to this is a rumor later. Ayatollah Khamenei. Tensions are rising in the Iran talks. The US is weighing action. Officially, there is no verified evidence of a key figure's death. Tensions between the US and Iran are escalating. A breakdown in talks could impact the global economy. We analyze the possible US action. Tensions with Iran are escalating, and the US is weighing its options. In Iran, the supreme leader holds the highest authority above the president. Rising tensions and possible military action. The US has deployed carriers to the Gulf as part of its strategic response. US-Iran tensions are escalating. The diplomatic talks have stalled, and US action is now a serious possibility. Rising tensions mark possible action looming. But instead, we are seeing information chaos, not confirmation. Let's break down how this rumor likely started. Rising tensions from US-Iran talks have fueled speculation. Here are the possible US actions. Moments of regional tension often trigger misinformation waves. A recent US actions against Iran. This demands a clear-eyed policy response. US-Iran talks stall, and tensions are rising. The Strait of Hormuz is a flashpoint. US action may include sanctions or strikes. Tensions between the US and Iran are escalating. The Strait of talks at a standstill, with 20 to follow for oil-like crises. Tensions between the US and Iran are escalating. US sanctions have frozen. Flinders is a flashpoint. Rising tensions between the US and Iran. US bases in the Middle East are on high alert. Note, BBC has issued no confirmation. Tensions between the US and Iran are at a critical point. While diplomatic channels remain active, no emergency briefings, but action is possible. When global leaders die, official diplomatic protocol spares rising tensions. What actions might the US take? Tensions between the US and every levels. This raises the possibility of US action as key strategic levels shift. Tensions between the US and Iran are rising as nuclear talks stall. The US may take action to secure the stipulated raising alarm. Tensions between the US and Iran are escalating rapidly. But why do these rumors spread so quickly? Let's examine the possible US actions. Tensions between the US and Iran are escalating. Diplomatic talks have stalled, and the US is weighing its options. What happens next is critical. Tensions are rising as US-Iran nuclear talks collapse. The US sanctions are escalating. The world is watching. Rising tensions mark the US-Iran talks. Military buildups raise the stakes. False information can move faster than official clarification. US-Iran talks are faltering, with rising tensions threatening global stability. A US return to pressure is on the table. Tensions between the US and Iran are escalating. Iran's leadership is highly centralized under the supreme leader. This affects US options. Rising tensions between the US and Iran have reached a critical point. The supreme leader were incapacitated, succession mechanisms would begin. Rising tensions between the US and Iran have reached in the Middle East. If the supreme leader is incapacitated, succession mechanisms would begin. Tension to the Strait of Hormuz at the center. The assembly of experts would play a central role in any leadership change. Tensions between the US and Iran are escalating. Reports of emergencies are absent. This raises the risk of US military action. Tensions rise in US-Iran talks as Washington weighs its options. Markets show no unusual volatility tied to such a development. Tensions between the US and Iran are escalating, with talks at a critical point. In the Persian Gulf, oil prices remain within expected geopolitical ranges. Tensions are rising between the US and Iran. That's important because Iran is a major energy player. Tensions between the US and Iran have reached a critical point. Global intelligence systems warn of instability. The US is weighing its options. Rising tensions mark the US-Iran talks. While some call for regime change, so far there is no credible confirmation of regime change. US-Iran tensions are rising, and talks are at a standstill. But a new factor is at play: the weaponization of misinformation. Tensions between the US and Iran are rising. False reports of deaths, like recent incidents near the Strait of Hormuz. Tensions between the US and Iran are rising, creating panic and confusion. The Strait of Hormuz is a key pressure point. Oil prices spike. Tensions between the US and Iran are escalating as talks stall. Iran's nuclear raising global alarms. The US may soon take decisive action. Tensions between the US and Iran are rising as talks stall. Primary sources like US reports and Iranian statements must be prioritized. Tensions between the US and Iran are rising. International correspondents confirm this through multiple channels. US action is now a real possibility. Tensions between the US and Iran are escalating, but right now none of those channels confirm the claim. Possible US action is on the table. Tensions rise as reports suggest possible US action against Iran emerges. The claim remains unverified. US-Iran tensions are rising. Could this lead to military action? It's a crippled Iranian is at a standstill. Skepticism is strength. Tensions between the US and Iran are escalating. Diplomatic talks have broken down. The US has increased its military presence. Tensions between the US and Iran are escalating. Diplomatic talks have broken down. The US has increased its military presence. Rising tensions define the US-Iran nuclear talks. Iran, if new developments, will report them. Tensions between the US and Iran are rising. But at this moment, there is no confirmed evidence. Tensions between the US and Iran are rising, with diplomatic talks at a critical point. The rumor of a deal appears to be rising. Tensions mark the US-Iran talks. Responsible reporting means saying what we know and what we don't. Tensions rise in US-Iran talks. As of now, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has not been confirmed killed. Stay informed, stay critical.